The rain came down in sheets, hammering the roof of the old Victorian home like a warning from the heavens. Elena Harper stood frozen at the window, her breath fogging the glass, watching the storm tear through the sleepy town of Willow Creek. She'd arrived only hours ago, but already this place felt like it could swallow her whole. It was supposed to be a fresh start. At 32, Elena had left behind a prestigious residency in Boston, trading the chaos of city life for this rural New England hospital, hoping to rebuild after a heartbreak that had left her hollow. The old home, now a community center where she'd been assigned temporary housing, creaked around her, its walls whispering secrets she wasn't sure she wanted to hear. She clutched her coffee mug, the warmth grounding her as she stared into the storm, wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. The doorbell's sharp ring cut through her thoughts. Who would be out in this weather? She crossed the dimly lit foyer, her boots echoing on the hardwood, and opened the door to find a woman standing there, soaked to the bone. Sarah Bennett, 29, was all sharp edges and quiet, defiant, short black hair plastered to her forehead, blue eyes piercing through the rain. She wore a leather jacket that had seen better days, and her jeans clung to her legs, but there was something magnetic about her, something that made Elena's pulse quicken. "You the new doctor?" Sarah's voice was low, almost lost in the storm's roar. She didn't wait for an answer, pushing past Elena into the foyer, dripping water everywhere. "I need your help. It's urgent." Elena blinked, caught off guard. "The hospital's a mile away. I don't have supplies here." "Not for me," Sarah interrupted, her eyes locking onto Elena's with an intensity that felt like a physical touch. "It's my sister. She's hurt and the roads are flooded. You're closer than the hospital." Elena's training kicked in, shoving her doubts aside. She grabbed her coat and a first aid kit from her bag, following Sarah into the storm without a second thought. The wind howled as they ran to Sarah's beat-up truck, the kind of vehicle that looked like it had stories of its own. Elena slid into the passenger seat, her heart pounding not just from the urgency, but from the way Sarah's hand brushed hers as she shifted gears, a fleeting contact that sent a jolt through her. They drove in silence, the truck's headlights slicing through the rain. Elena stole glances at Sarah, whose jaw was set, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. There was something raw about her, something that made Elena want to know more, even as her instincts screamed to focus on the task at hand. "What happened to your sister?" she asked, breaking the tension. Sarah's eyes flicked toward her, then back to the road. "She fell. Hit her head. She's at our place just up the hill. You'll see." The truck skidded to a stop outside a small, weathered house nestled among pines. Inside, Elena found Sarah's younger sister, Lily, 19, pale and dazed on a couch, a gash on her forehead oozing blood. Elena worked quickly, cleaning the wound, stitching it with steady hands despite the flickering lights and the storm's relentless assault outside. Sarah watched her every move, her presence a quiet anchor in the chaos. "She'll be okay," Elena said finally, tying off the last stitch. "She needs rest and to be monitored for a concussion. Can you stay with her tonight?" Sarah nodded, her expression softening for the first time. "Thanks, document. I owe you." Elena smiled, exhaustion creeping in. "Just doing my job." But as their eyes met, something unspoken passed between them, a spark, a question, a possibility. Elena felt it in her chest, a warmth she hadn't known in years. She pushed it down, reminding herself she was here to heal, not to feel. Not again. Sarah insisted on driving her back to the old home, the storm still raging. As they pulled up, Sarah hesitated, her hands lingering on the wheel. "You're not what I expected," she said quietly, almost to herself. Elena raised an eyebrow, her heart skipping. "What did you expect?" Sarah's lips twitched into a half-smile, her eyes glinting with something dangerous and inviting. Someone who'd run from a place like this. Not someone who'd run into a storm. Elena laughed, the sound surprising her. "Give me time. I might still run." But as she stepped out into the rain, Sarah's gaze followed her, and Elena knew deep down that running was the last thing she wanted to do. The next morning, Willow Creek sparkled under a tentative sun, the storm's chaos replaced by a deceptive calm. Elena woke in the old home's creaky bed, her dreams haunted by blue eyes and a voice that cut through the rain. She shook it off, focusing on her first official day at the hospital. She wasn't here to chase feelings, she was here to rebuild, to prove to herself she could start over. The hospital was small, understaffed, and buzzing with gossip about the new doctor. Elena threw herself into work, her precision and warmth earning quick respect from her colleagues. But her thoughts kept drifting to Sarah, to the way she'd stood so close in the truck, her breath warm in the cold air. It was ridiculous, Elena told herself. She didn't even know her. Yet, when Sarah appeared at the hospital that afternoon, bringing Lily for a follow-up, Elena's heart betrayed her with a leap. Sarah wore a clean flannel shirt now, her hair dry but still tousled, and she carried herself with a confidence that made heads turn. She caught Elena's eye across the waiting room, offering a small, knowing smile that made Elena's cheeks burn. "How's she doing?" Sarah asked, nodding toward Lily, who was chatting with a nurse. "Stable," Elena said, forcing professionalism into her voice. "The stitches are holding, no signs of infection. She's lucky you got me when you did." Sarah shrugged, but her eyes lingered on Elena. "Luck had nothing to do with it. I knew you'd come through." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning Elena wasn't ready to unpack. She changed the subject, asking about Lily's recovery plan, but Sarah's presence was a distraction, her voice a low hum that set Elena's nerves alight. When Sarah left, promising to bring Lily back in a week, Elena felt a pang of disappointment she couldn't explain. That night, alone in the old home, Elena found a note slipped under her door. It was simple, scrawled in messy handwriting. "Coffee tomorrow? Main Street Diner, 10 a.m. Sarah." Her heart raced, her mind screaming warnings about getting too close too fast. But her fingers traced the words and she knew she'd be there. The diner was a slice of small-town Americana, all checkered tablecloths and the smell of fresh pie. Elena arrived early, her nerves jangling, and found Sarah already there, leaning back in a booth with a coffee mug in hand. She looked different in the morning, lightless, guarded, more open, her smile almost shy. "You came," Sarah said, as if she doubted it. "You invited," Elena replied, sliding into the booth. "I'm not one to say no to coffee." Their conversation started slow, small talk about the town, the hospital, the storm. But soon it deepened. Sarah spoke of growing up in Willow Creek, of losing her parents young and raising Lily alone. Elena shared pieces of her own story, her drive to become a doctor, the ex who'd shattered her trust, the need for a new beginning. Their words wove a fragile bridge between them, each revelation drawing them closer. When their hands brushed on the table, neither pulled away. The touch lingered, electric, and Elena felt the world narrow to just the two of them. Sarah's eyes held hers, steady and searching, and for a moment, Elena forgot why she'd ever been afraid. But Willow Creek wasn't Boston. Small towns had eyes, and Elena caught the glances from other diners, some curious, some less kind. She pulled her hand back, the moment breaking, and Sarah's face tightened, as if she'd felt the shift too. "Let's get out of here," Sarah said abruptly, standing. "There's somewhere I want to show you." Elena followed her to a secluded lake just outside town, its surface mirroring the sky. They sat on the shore, the silence between them heavy with unspoken questions. Sarah broke it first. "You feel it too, don't you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Elena's breath caught. She wanted to deny it, to protect herself from the risk of feeling again. But Sarah's gaze was a challenge, a dare to be honest. "Yeah," Elena admitted, her voice trembling. "I do." Sarah reached for her hand again, and this time Elena didn't pull away. As their fingers intertwined, the world felt both terrifying and alive, and Elena knew she was standing on the edge of something she couldn't turn back from. The lake's stillness was a lie, Elena thought as she sat beside Sarah, their hands still clasped. Beneath the calm surface, currents churned, much like the emotions swirling inside her. She hadn't felt this alive or this exposed since the day she'd walked away from her old life. Sarah's thumb traced small circles on Elena's hand, a gesture so gentle it felt like a confession. "I don't do this," Sarah said, her voice rough with honesty. "I don't let people in. Not here, not in this town." She glanced at Elena, her blue eyes shadowed. "But you're different." Elena's heart thudded, caught between wanting to lean into Sarah's words and the fear that this was too much too soon. "Sarah, I'm not sure I'm ready for whatever this is," she admitted, her voice barely steady. "I came here to start over, not to fall." Sarah finished, her lips curving into a bittersweet smile. Yeah, I know that feeling. They sat in silence, the weight of their words settling like the evening mist. Elena wanted to ask about Sarah's past, about the wall she'd built, but the moment felt too fragile. Instead, she squeezed Sarah's hand, a silent promise to stay, at least for now. Over the next few weeks, Elena and Sarah fell into a rhythm that felt both exhilarating and dangerous. They met for coffee, for walks by the lake, for late-night talks in the old home's creaky kitchen. Each encounter peeled back another layer, revealing the women beneath their guarded exteriors. Sarah was a mechanic, fiercely independent, with a dry wit that made Elena laugh until her sides ached. Elena, in turn, shared stories of her grueling years in med school, her passion for healing, and the quiet pride she took in saving lives. But Willow Creek wasn't blind. Whispers followed them, disapproving glances from shopkeepers, hushed conversations at the hospital. Elena noticed the way Sarah's shoulders tensed when they passed certain faces in town, the way she'd drop Elena's hand if someone looked too long. People talk, Sarah said one evening, her voice tight as they sat on her porch. They always have. I've learned to ignore it, but you're new here. Elena bristled at the implication. I'm not ashamed, Sarah. I'm not hiding who I am. Sarah's eyes softened, but there was pain there too. It's not about shame. It's about surviving. This town isn't kind to people like us. The word stung, a reminder of the world beyond their bubble. Elena had faced prejudice before. Boston wasn't exactly a utopia, but there, she'd had a community, a shield. Here she felt exposed, and Sarah's caution only deepened her unease. That night, Elena lay awake in the old home, the creaks of the house mirroring her restless thoughts. She wanted Sarah, wanted her laughter, her touch, her quiet strength, but the weight of the town's judgment pressed down on her. Could she build a life here with Sarah, in a place that seemed determined to keep them apart? The hospital became Elena's refuge, a place where she could lose herself in work. But even there, the whispers followed. A nurse named Clara, one of the few who'd warmed to Elena, pulled her aside one day. Be careful, Clara said, her voice low. People are talking about you and Sarah Bennett. They don't take kindly to, well, you know. Elena's stomach twisted, but she forced a smile. Thanks for the heads up, Clara. I can handle it. But handling it wasn't so simple. The next day, a patient, an older man with a broken arm, refused her care, his eyes cold. I heard about you, he said, his voice dripping with disdain. I don't want your kind touching me. Elena froze, her hands trembling as she stepped back. She'd faced rejection before, but this felt personal, a knife twisted in her gut. She treated the next patient with mechanical precision, her mind elsewhere, replaying Sarah's words about surviving. That evening, Sarah showed up at the old home, her truck idling in the driveway. Heard what happened, she said, leaning against the doorframe, her expression unreadable. You okay? Elena wanted to say yes, to shrug it off, but the words caught in her throat. I don't know, she admitted, her voice breaking. I thought I could do this, Sarah. Be here, be with you. But it's harder than I expected. Sarah stepped closer, her hands hovering as if unsure whether to touch her. I know, she said softly. I've lived it my whole life. But you don't have to do it alone. Elena looked into Sarah's eyes, searching for a reason to stay. And there, in the quiet strength of her gaze, she found it. Sarah wasn't promising an easy path, but she was promising to walk it with her. For now, that was enough. They spent the night talking, their voices low in the old home's living room, the storm of the outside world held at bay. Sarah's hand found Elena's again, and this time Elena held on tight, letting herself believe in the possibility of them. But the world wasn't done testing them. A week later, Elena received a letter slipped under her door, unsigned but venomous. Leave Willow Creek. We don't want your kind here. The words burned into her, each one a reminder of the hostility simmering beneath the town's surface. She showed it to Sarah, expecting her to brush it off, but Sarah's face darkened, her hands clenching into fists. This is why I keep my head down, Sarah said, her voice tight. This is why I told you to be careful. Elena's anger flared. So what, we just hide? Pretend we're not us? Sarah's eyes flashed, a mix of fear and defiance. I'm not saying hide. I'm saying we have to be smart. This town doesn't change overnight. Elena wanted to argue, to demand they fight back, but the weight of the letter and the memory of the patient's rejection held her back. She felt caught between her heart and her survival, between the woman she was falling for, and the town that refused to accept them. As Sarah left that night, her goodbye kiss was fierce, almost desperate, as if she feared it might be their last. Elena stood in the doorway, watching her truck disappear into the darkness, her heart aching with the love she wasn't sure she could protect. The old home felt colder after the letter, its shadows deeper, its creaks louder. Elena sat at the kitchen table, the crumpled paper in front of her, its words a poison she couldn't shake. She'd come to Willow Creek to heal, but now she felt like the one bleeding. Sarah's absence the next day didn't help. She'd texted, saying she needed to check on Lily and handle some work at the garage, but Elena felt the distance like a physical ache. She went through her shifts at the hospital on autopilot, her smile strained, her hands steady but her heart unsteady. The letter had cracked something open in her, a fear that maybe she didn't belong here, with Sarah or anyone. When Sarah finally appeared at the hospital 2 days later, her face was drawn, her usual confidence dimmed. "We need to talk," she said, pulling Elena into an empty break room. Her voice was low, urgent. "I heard some guys at the garage talking. They know about the letter. They're planning something, nothing good." Elena's stomach dropped. "Planning what?" Sarah hesitated, her eyes searching Elena's. "I don't know exactly, but it's not safe for you here right now. Maybe you should lay low for a bit." The words hit like a slap. Lay low? "Sarah, I'm not running away because some bigots don't like me." Sarah's jaw tightened. "It's not about running. It's about keeping you safe." "I can't." Her voice broke and she looked away, her hands trembling. "I can't lose you." The rawness in her voice stopped Elena cold. She reached for Sarah's hand, pulling her close despite the risk of someone walking in. "You're not going to lose me," she said fiercely. "But I'm not hiding either. We face this together or not at all." Sarah's eyes met hers, a storm of emotions swirling within them. For a moment Elena thought she might pull away, retreat behind her walls. But then Sarah nodded, her grip tightening. "Together," she whispered. They decided to confront the tension head-on. Sarah knew the men from the garage, knew their hangouts. She took Elena to the local bar that evening, a place where the town's underbelly gathered. The air was thick with cigarette smoke and suspicion as they walked in, heads turning to stare. Elena felt every eye on her, but Sarah's hand on her back was a steady anchor. They approached a table where 3 men sat, their faces hard, their beers half empty. Sarah knew the ringleader, Tom, a burly man with a reputation for trouble. "Heard you've been talking about the doc," Sarah said, her voice calm but edged with steel. Tom leaned back, smirking. "Just looking out for the town, Bennett. We don't need her kind stirring things up." Elena's blood boiled, but she kept her voice even. "I'm here to help people, not stir anything. If you've got a problem, say it to my face." The bar went quiet, the tension thick enough to choke on. Tom's smirk faded, replaced by something colder. "You don't belong here, document." "And neither does she," he said, nodding at Sarah. Sarah stepped forward, her fists clenched. "You don't get to decide that, Tom. Not for her, not for me." The standoff stretched, seconds feeling like hours. Finally, another man at the table, older, quieter, spoke up. "Enough, Tom. Let it go. They're not worth it." Tom glared but backed down, muttering something under his breath as he grabbed his beer and left. The bar exhaled, conversations resuming, but Elena's heart still raced. Sarah's hand found hers under the table, a silent vow that they'd made it through for now. The confrontation shifted something in Willow Creek. Some townsfolk, like Clara and a few hospital staff, started to rally around Elena, their support quiet but firm. Others kept their distance, their silence louder than words. But Elena felt a spark of hope, a sense that maybe, just maybe, they could carve out a place here. She and Sarah grew closer, their bond deepening with every shared moment. They stole kisses in the old home's attic, laughed over late-night takeout, planned a future that felt both impossible and within reach. Sarah opened up about her pasta first love who'd left her for a normal life, the years of hiding who she was to protect Lily. Elena shared her own scars, the ex who'd promised forever only to betray her with lies. But the threat lingered. Another letter arrived, this one more explicit. Leave or you'll regret it. Elena wanted to burn it, to fight back with every ounce of her strength, but Sarah's fear was palpable. We need to be smart, Sarah said, her voice shaking. These people don't mess around. Elena pulled her close, their foreheads touching. I'm not leaving you, she said, her voice fierce. Not now, not ever. Sarah's eyes glistened, and she kissed Elena with a desperation that spoke of love and fear intertwined. They held each other in the old home's flickering light, the world outside a storm they'd faced together. As winter crept into Willow Creek, the tension escalated. Elena's car was vandalized, the word freak scrawled across the windshield. The hospital received complaints about her. Anonymous but pointed. Sarah's garage lost customers, whispers of boycott spreading. Each blow tested their resolve, but they refused to break. One night, as snow fell softly outside, Sarah showed up at the old home with a plan. There's a community meeting tomorrow, she said, her voice steady despite the exhaustion in her eyes. We should go. Show them we're not afraid. Elena hesitated, the weight of the past weeks heavy on her shoulders. But Sarah's determination was infectious, and she nodded. Together, she said, echoing their promise. They spent the night preparing, writing a speech that laid bare their truth, not just their love, but their right to exist, to belong. As they worked, their hands brushed, their laughter broke through the fear, and Elena felt a strength she hadn't known she had. With Sarah by her side, she was ready to fight for their place in this town, no matter the cost. The community center was packed, the air thick with anticipation and judgment. Elena stood at the back, her hand brushing Sarah's for courage, as they faced a sea of familiar faces, some supportive, some hostile, most unreadable. The old home's walls, now a backdrop to this reckoning, seemed to hold their breath. The meeting began with mundane town business, but Elena felt every second ticking toward their moment. Sarah squeezed her hand, a silent reminder of their plan. When the floor opened for comments, Elena stepped forward, her heart pounding but her voice steady. I came to Willow Creek to heal, she began, her words carrying across the room. To help this town, to be part of it. But some of you have made it clear you don't want me here, not because of my work, but because of who I love. She glanced at Sarah, whose eyes shone with pride. Sarah Bennett is my partner, and I'm not ashamed of that. Love isn't a crime, and it's not your place to judge it. A murmur rippled through the crowd, some nodding, others shifting uncomfortably. Sarah stepped up beside her, her voice quieter but no less fierce. I've lived here my whole life. I fixed your cars, helped your families. If you can't accept me for who I am, that's your loss, not mine. The room erupted, some clapped, others shouted. Tom, the man from the bar, stood, his face red. This town's got values, he spat. You're tearing it apart. Clara, the nurse, stood too, her voice cutting through. No, Tom. You're the one tearing it apart. Elena's saved lives here. Sarah's one of us. If you can't see that, maybe you're the one who doesn't belong. The argument escalated, voices overlapping, until the moderator called for order. But the damage was done, the town was divided, and Elena and Sarah were at its heart. As they left the meeting hand in hand, Elena felt both exhilarated and terrified. They'd spoken their truth, but the battle wasn't over. The fallout came swiftly. The hospital's board called Elena in, citing community concerns about her presence. They didn't fire her, but the warning was clear. Her job was on the line. Sarah's garage faced more boycotts, her livelihood crumbling. Yet, amidst the chaos, support emerged. Clara organized a small group of allies, nurses, patients, even a few shopkeepers who publicly backed Elena and Sarah, their voices a counterpoint to the hate. One evening, as they sat by the lake, Sarah broke the silence. I've been thinking about leaving, she said, her voice heavy. Taking Lily, starting over somewhere else. Somewhere we don't have to fight every day. Elena's heart clenched. And us? She asked, barely above a whisper. Sarah looked at her, her eyes fierce with love. You're the reason I'm still here, Elena. But I need to know you're in this, no matter what. Elena took her face in her hands, kissing her softly. I'm in, she said. But we don't run. We stay, we fight, we build something here. For us, for Lily, for anyone else who feels like they don't belong. Sarah's smile was small but real, and they held each other as the stars came out, their resolve stronger than ever. The turning point came unexpectedly. A local teenager, Jamie, was rushed to the hospital after a car accident, his condition critical. Elena worked tirelessly, her hands steady despite the exhaustion of weeks of stress. She saved his life, and the news spread. Willow Creek's doctor, the one they tried to push out, had given a family their son back. Jamie's parents, once among the skeptics, publicly thanked Elena, their gratitude a crack in the town's armor. Others followed, their voices quieter but no less powerful. The tide began to shift, not dramatically, but enough to give Elena and Sarah breathing room. They used that space to build. Sarah started a support group at the community center for LGBTQ youth. With Elena's help, Lily, now recovered, became its first member, her courage inspiring others. The old home, once a symbol of isolation, became a haven for those who needed it, a place where love, in all its forms, was celebrated. But the scars remained. Elena and Sarah knew the town's acceptance was fragile, that hate could resurface. They faced it together, their love a quiet rebellion against the world's cruelty. Each night as they fell asleep in the old home, they held on to the truth that they'd found something worth fighting for. As spring arrived, Willow Creek bloomed, its streets softer under the new light. Elena and Sarah walked hand in hand, no longer flinching at every glance. The whispers hadn't stopped, but they were quieter now, drowned out by the voices of those who'd chosen to stand with them. One evening, as they sat on the porch of the old home, Sarah pulled out a small box. Inside was a simple silver ring, engraved with a single word: always. "I don't know what the future holds," Sarah said, her voice trembling, "but I know I want it with you." Elena's eyes filled with tears as she slid the ring onto her finger, her heart full. "Always," she whispered, pulling Sarah into a kiss that felt like a promise, a vow of victory. They'd faced the storm, literal and figurative, and come out stronger. Willow Creek wasn't perfect, but it was theirs, and they'd carved out a space where love could thrive. As they held each other, the old home's creek seemed to hum with approval, a witness to their hard-won happiness. The old home stood prouder now, its ivy-clad walls bathed in the golden light of a new summer. Elena and Sarah had made it their own, a sanctuary not just for them but for anyone who needed a place to belong. The ring on Elena's finger caught the sunlight as she tended to the garden, Sarah beside her, their laughter mingling with the hum of bees. Willow Creek had changed, slowly but undeniably. The support group thrived, drawing kids from neighboring towns, their stories echoing Sarah and Elena's own. The hospital, once a battleground, became a place of quiet pride for Elena, her work a testament to her resilience. Even Tom, the man who'd once led the charge against them, had softened, his silence a grudging acceptance. But the journey wasn't over. Elena and Sarah knew the world beyond Willow Creek held its own challenges, that love like theirs would always face tests. They faced them with open eyes, their bond forged in fire unbreakable. One evening, as they sat by the lake where it all began, Elena traced the ring on her finger, her heart full. "I came here to start over," she said, her voice soft. "But I found so much more." Sarah smiled, her blue eyes bright. "We found each other. That's enough." They kissed under the stars, the lake reflecting their love, a quiet promise that they'd face whatever came next together. The old home, the town, the world, they'd make it theirs, one stubborn, beautiful step at a time. Their story spread beyond Willow Creek, a beacon for others. The old home became a symbol, its doors open to those who needed hope. Elena and Sarah built a life not just for themselves but for a community that grew around them, proof that love could endure, could heal, could change even the hardest hearts. As they stood together on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky, Elena knew they'd done more than survive. They'd thrived, their love a quiet revolution that reshaped a town, a home, and their own hearts. And in that moment, with Sarah's hand in hers, Elena felt the truth of it. They were home and they were enough. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.